2 weeks had passed since humanity's answer. The galaxy was still trying to understand what had happened. In the conference room at Nexus Station, the seats had changed. Coalition representatives no longer sat in positions of honor. They sat along the walls like students waiting for judgment. At the center of the circular table, Ambassador G1 stood where Chancellor Veltharis had stood 2 weeks ago. The Chancellor himself sat in a simple chair, his 4 arms hanging limply. His purple skin had paled to a sickly gray. He looked like he had aged 20 years and 14 days. High Arbiter Quanmal sat beside him, ancient eyes watching everything with careful attention. Admiral Daywan stood behind G1. His uniform was clean and pressed, but he looked tired. Command always carried weight. Command during war carried even more. Let us review the current situation, G1 began. Her voice was calm and professional. In the past 2 weeks, coalition military capacity has been reduced by 73%. 347 major warships have been destroyed or disabled. 92 military bases are non-operational. Supply networks are disrupted across 60% of coalition space. Production facilities are operating at 12% of normal capacity. She paused, letting the numbers sink in. Every coalition representative knew these figures already. They had watched the disaster unfold in real time. But hearing them spoken aloud made them undeniable. Human forces have ceased offensive operations as of 48 hours ago. We have achieved our strategic objectives. The coalition no longer has the capacity to threaten human space. We could continue operations. We could target civilian infrastructure. We could reduce your civilization to chaos. But we choose not to. Chancellor Veltharis raised his head. Why show mercy now after such destruction? Because mercy was always our intention, G1 replied. We did not want this war. We tried for 3 years to find peaceful resolution. When you responded with genocide, we had no choice but to defend ourselves. But our goal was never to destroy the coalition. Our goal was to ensure you could not destroy us. A Kelid representative stood trembling with rage. You murdered thousands of our people. You destroyed infrastructure that took centuries to build. And you call this mercy? Admiral Daywan spoke, his voice hard as iron. You destroyed 3 of our colonies without warning. 2 million civilians died in your attacks. When we responded with military force against military targets, we did so with far more restraint than you showed us. Every attack we made was against military infrastructure. We disabled your stations, not destroyed them. We gave evacuation warnings. We targeted fleets, not population centers. Do not confuse our precision with cruelty. The room fell silent. The coalition representatives had no answer to that truth. G1 continued. We are here to discuss peace terms. Real peace terms, not demands for surrender. Earth proposes the following. First, immediate mutual recognition of borders. All currently held human colonies will be recognized as sovereign human territory. Second, reparations. The coalition will pay for reconstruction of the 3 colonies you destroyed. Third, demilitarization of disputed zones. Neither side will establish military bases in the buffer systems between our territories. Fourth, technology exchange. We will share Cascade Drive technology in exchange for medical and scientific knowledge. You would share your greatest advantage? Quanmal asked, surprised. We would share the technology that could benefit all species, G1 answered. Cascade Drive allows faster, safer travel. It could revolutionize galactic civilization. We have no desire to hoard it like a weapon. We wanted to be part of the galactic community. That desire has not changed, even though you forced us to prove we could destroy you first. A long silence filled the room. Coalition representatives whispered among themselves. The terms were generous. Shockingly generous considering humanity's overwhelming tactical advantage. They had expected demands for territory, for resources, for the coalition's complete submission. Instead, humanity asked only for recognition and restitution. They offered to share their revolutionary technology. They proposed peaceful coexistence rather than domination. Why? Veltharis asked. You could demand anything. You could claim half our territory. You could impose tribute. You could make us subordinate to Earth. Why offer peace instead? Jiwan's expression softened slightly. Because we remember who we wanted to be. 3 years ago, when we first met you, we were excited, hopeful. We imagined a future of cooperation and friendship. You destroyed that dream with your arrogance and violence. But we will not let your mistakes turn us into something we do not want to be. We fought to survive. Now we choose to build peace. Behind her, Admiral Daywan shifted slightly. G1 knew what he was thinking. Not everyone on Earth agreed with these generous terms. Many wanted revenge, wanted the coalition to suffer as humanity had suffered, wanted to impose harsh conditions that would keep the coalition weak for generations, but that path led only to future wars, to endless cycles of revenge and counter-revenge. Ji-won believed humanity could be better than that. She hoped she was right. High Arbiter Quan Mal stood slowly. His ancient body moved carefully. When he spoke, his voice carried authority that centuries of life had earned. I have lived for 800 years. I have seen civilizations rise and fall. I have witnessed the birth of interstellar travel and the founding of the coalition. In all that time, I have never seen what humanity showed us in these past weeks. He paused, looking at each coalition representative. We treated them as children playing at civilization. We dismissed their technology as primitive. We ignored their warnings and destroyed their colonies to teach them their place. We believed ourselves so superior that we could not imagine them as threats. And they proved us wrong, Quan Mal continued. Not just militarily, though their tactical brilliance was undeniable, but philosophically. They came to the stars hoping to be our friends. We responded with contempt and violence. They fought back with devastating effectiveness, and now from a position of absolute tactical superiority, they offer peace rather than revenge. The old being turned to Ji-won. You shame us, Ambassador. You show us what we should have been. I accept your terms on behalf of the Kelid Concordat. One by one, other representatives stood and accepted. The Ashvari, the Trilocs, the Mentari Collective. Species after species acknowledging the new reality. Humanity was no longer a young species to be dismissed. They were equals, proven through fire. Chancellor Veltheris was the last to stand. I accept these terms. But I have a question, Ambassador. If we refuse, if we continue this war, what would you do? Ji-won met his eyes without flinching. We would finish what we started. We would dismantle every military asset you possess. We would isolate every coalition world until you had no choice but to accept peace. We do not want to do this. But we will if we must. Humanity learned long ago that survival sometimes requires terrible choices. We are prepared to make those choices if you force us to. But you would prefer peace, Veltheris said. Always, Ji-won replied. We would always prefer peace. That has never changed. The treaty was signed that day. Formal documents. Legal language. But the real agreement was simpler. Respect. The coalition would respect humanity's right to exist. Humanity would respect the coalition's territory. Both sides would remember what happened when respect failed. Admiral Daewon authorized the recall of human forces. Shadow fleets began returning to their hidden bases. Special operations teams extracted from coalition stations. Dr. Hyunwoo started preparing Cascade Drive specifications for transfer to coalition scientists. On Earth, celebrations erupted. Humanity had survived, had proven themselves, had earned their place in the galaxy, but there were also memorials. For the 2 million who died in the colony attacks, for the human personnel lost during the operation, for the innocent coalition civilians caught in the crossfire. War was never without cost. Commander Soo-jin, a young officer who had led one of the strike teams, visited Admiral Daewon in his office. She looked troubled. Sir, I need to ask something. What we did, destroying their fleets before they could defend themselves, was it right? Was it honorable? Daewon considered the question carefully. Honor is complex in war. We used deception and surprise. We struck when they were vulnerable. Some would call that dishonorable. But remember what brought us to this point. The coalition destroyed 3 colonies without warning, without declaration of war, without giving civilians time to evacuate. When we fought back, we targeted military assets. We gave warnings where possible. We showed restraint even in victory. He stood and walked to the window, looking at Earth below. Was it honorable? I don't know. Was it necessary? Absolutely. Would I make the same choice again? Yes, because the alternative was humanity's extinction or permanent subjugation. Sometimes survival requires us to do things we wish we didn't have to do. Soo-jin nodded slowly. I understand, sir. Thank you. 3 months had passed since Daewon became emperor, and he still felt like an imposter wearing someone else's face. He stood in the command center of the Imperial Station, watching holographic displays that showed the status of 300 worlds. The information flowed into his mind through the crown, a constant stream of data that would have driven him mad if the crown hadn't also given him the ability to process it. Food production on World 47, mining quotas on World 92, A minor dispute about water rights on World 216. He could feel all of it, every heartbeat of the Empire flowing through his awareness. Your Majesty, Admiral Tae Yang has arrived. Daewon turned. He still wasn't used to that title. The aide who spoke was human, one of 50 humans now working in the Imperial administration. Daewon had requested them specifically. He needed reminders of who he had been. Send him in. Tae Yang entered the command center with the confident stride of a military officer. He was 10 years older than Daewon, and they had grown up in the same district on Earth. Tae Yang had joined the fleet while Daewon had entered diplomatic service. They had remained friends despite their different paths. But now, when Tae Yang looked at Daewon, there was something else in his eyes. Uncertainty. Maybe fear. Admiral, Daewon said formally. Your Majesty. Tae Yang bowed. It looked awkward, as if he wasn't sure how deep to bow or how long to hold it. Stop that. Daewon waved his hand. When we're alone, I'm still Daewon. Just Daewon. Tae Yang straightened but didn't relax. Are you? Because the reports I've read suggest otherwise. Daewon felt something twist in his chest. What reports? The medical ones. The ones that say you haven't aged a single day since you put on that crown. The ones that say you survived a shuttle crash last week that should have killed you. The ones that say you barely sleep anymore. Tae Yang moved closer, his voice dropping. What did that Empress do to you? Daewon touched the crown. It never came off. He had tried in private moments to remove it. The pain had been immediate and excruciating. The crown was part of him now, woven into his nervous system and his brain. Removing it would mean death, or it would have meant death if death were still possible for him. She cursed me, Daewon said quietly. Immortality sounds like a gift in stories. In reality, it's a prison. There has to be a way to break it. I've looked. The crown contains the memories of previous emperors, and I can access them if I focus. 51 rulers before Hanasol wore this crown. 23 of them tried to remove it. All of them died. Daewon looked at his old friend. I'm stuck, Tae Yang. I'm stuck here until the Empire falls apart, and that could take centuries. Tae Yang sat down heavily in a chair. We need to find a way. This isn't right. You're human, Daewon. You deserve to live a human life. I stopped being fully human the moment I accepted the crown. Daewon pulled up a hologram. It showed brain scans, his own, taken weekly. See these patterns? That's not my original neural structure. The crown has rewritten parts of my brain. I think faster now. I process information differently. And I have memories that aren't mine. Hanasol's memories? Hers and others. Sometimes I forget which thoughts are my own and which are echoes of dead emperors. Daewon dismissed the hologram. But we have more immediate problems than my personal crisis. The Vexians are testing our borders. Tae Yang's expression shifted instantly to military focus. I saw the reports. 3 raids in the past month. They're probing our defenses. They think we're weak, a human emperor, an empire in transition. They're waiting to see if we'll collapse on our own. Daewon pulled up tactical displays. I need you to reinforce the border sectors. Take the 3rd Fleet and make a show of strength. Don't engage unless attacked, but make it clear we're not easy prey. Understood. Tae Yang stood. I'll deploy within the hour. Tae Yang. Daewon stopped him at the door. Thank you. For still treating me like a person. Tae Yang smiled, but it was sad. You're my friend. That doesn't change just because you're wearing a crown. He paused. But Daewon, I need you to promise me something. Don't lose yourself in this. Don't become like them. After Tae Yang left, Daewon stood alone in the command center. He could feel the empire around him. A living thing made of ships and stations and billions of lives. It was intoxicating and terrifying. A soft chime announced another presence. A hologram materialized, showing a Talaxian woman who looked young despite being a preserved consciousness centuries old. Jinneh, Daewon acknowledged. Jinneh had been a court scientist before the plague killed her body. She had uploaded her consciousness into the Imperial computer systems and now served as his advisor. She was the only person who truly understood what the crown had done to him. You're troubled, she observed. The Vexians attacked a colony world an hour ago. Small force easily repelled, but it's an escalation. Daewon pulled up the reports. They killed 200 civilians before our defense grid drove them off. What will you do? Daewon felt anger rise in him, hot and fierce. Through the crown, he could feel the fear of the colonists, the rage of the defense forces. the expectation that their emperor would respond. The old Day One would have called for diplomatic channels, for measured responses, but the crown whispered other options. Hana Sol's memories showed him how she had handled such provocations. Overwhelming force. Make an example. Show strength, I'll go myself, Day One said. Janae's hologram flickered. Your Majesty, that's not necessary. Send the fleet. You don't need to personally. I do. Day One felt the crown's power flowing through him, felt the combat systems activating. The Vexians need to understand that this empire is not weak. That I am not weak. He left the command center and headed for the hangar bay. A ship was prepared for him, a fast cruiser equipped with weapons that could level cities. He shouldn't be able to pilot it. He had never trained for combat, but the crown knew. 51 emperors' worth of military knowledge filled his mind. He could fly the ship as easily as walking. The border world was 12 hours away at maximum speed. When Day One arrived, he found the Vexian raiders still in the system, looting a mining station. He didn't call for their surrender. He didn't issue warnings. The crown's weapon systems activated, and Day One felt them as extensions of his own body. Telekinetic cannons, powered by the same technology that made the crown, lashed out. The lead Vexian ship simply came apart, torn to pieces by invisible forces. The other ships tried to flee. Day One hunted them down methodically, efficiently. He felt nothing but cold satisfaction as each one exploded. This was what emperors did. This was what the crown demanded. When the last ship was destroyed, he landed on the colony world. Thousands of people gathered to see their emperor. They cheered. They celebrated. They looked at him with awe and gratitude. Day One stood before them and felt empty. He had just killed hundreds of people without hesitation, without remorse. The crown had shown him how, had whispered that it was necessary, and he had obeyed. He flew back to the Imperial station in silence. When he arrived, Tai Yang was waiting for him in the hangar bay. The Admiral's face was pale. I watched the recording, Tai Yang said. What you did to those ships. I protected Imperial citizens. You tore those ships apart like paper. You killed everyone aboard without giving them a chance to surrender. Tai Yang grabbed Day One's arm. That's not you. That's not the man I know. Day One pulled away. Maybe the man you knew is gone. He walked past his friend, heading for his quarters. But he could feel Tai Yang's eyes on his back, and he could feel the weight of what he had become. In his quarters, Day One stood before a mirror. He looked exactly the same as he had 3 months ago. Not a day older. Not a single gray hair. But his eyes looked different. Harder. Colder. He touched the crown and felt Hana Sol's memories stir. She had done things like this, had made hard choices, had sacrificed her humanity piece by piece for the sake of the Empire. She had ruled for 800 years, growing more distant from those she governed with each passing century. Was this his future? To slowly lose himself until nothing remained but the crown and its imperative to rule? Janae's hologram appeared. Your Majesty, there is something you should know. About the crown. About the curse. Day One turned. Tell me. I've been studying the crown structure. The curse that Empress Hana Sol spoke of is real, but it's more complex than simple immortality. The crown doesn't just preserve you, it absorbs you. Every emperor who has worn it has left an imprint, a copy of their consciousness. You're not just connected to their memories. Over time, you will merge with them. You will become them. How long? It varies. For some decades, for others centuries, but it always happens eventually. The emperor becomes a composite being, neither fully themselves nor fully the previous rulers, just an amalgamation dedicated to the empire's survival. Day One felt cold despite the warm air of his quarters. Is there any way to stop it? The crown can be broken. The curse can be lifted, but it would require tools and knowledge that may no longer exist. The Talaxians who created this technology are dead. Their research was destroyed in the plague. Then I'm already lost. Not yet. You're still mostly yourself. You still feel doubt, still question your actions. That means you're still human where it matters, Giantess. 10 years had passed, though for Day One they felt like both an eternity and a brief moment. Time had become strange for him. Days blurred together when you didn't age, when you didn't tire, when you existed in a constant state of connection to an empire that never slept. He stood in the throne room, the same room where Hana Sol had died. He had kept it mostly empty as she had. Advisors came and went, but he preferred the silence. In the silence, he could almost remember what it felt like to be alone with his own thoughts. Your Majesty, The delegation from the free colonies has arrived. Daewon turned. His aide was a young human woman named Su Bin, a historian who documented everything about the transition era. She had been 12 when he became emperor. Now she was 22, and sometimes he caught her looking at him with a mixture of fascination and pity. Show them in. The delegation was led by a woman named Boram. She was tall for a human, with sharp eyes and a bearing that reminded Daewon of military officers. But she wasn't military. She was a revolutionary. The Free Colonies movement had started 5 years ago. Humans who resented being part of an empire who wanted democracy and self-rule. They had begun as protesters and had escalated to sabotage. Last month they had attacked an imperial supply depot. Boram and her companions stopped before the throne. They didn't bow. It was a calculated insult, and Daewon felt the crown whisper that he should punish it. He ignored the whisper. Boram, he said, "Thank you for coming." "I didn't come to thank you. I came to deliver a message." Boram's voice was hard. "The free colonies will no longer accept imperial rule. We demand autonomy. We demand the right to govern ourselves. The empire provides protection, trade, and stability. Without it, human colonies would be vulnerable to attacks from hostile powers. We survived before the empire. We'll survive after it." Boram stepped closer. "You're human, Daewon. Or you were once. How can you sit on that throne and rule over your own people? Like we're subjects instead of citizens?" The crown whispered again. Hanasol's voice, or the voice of the emperor before her. Or perhaps all 51 voices speaking as one. Dissent must be controlled. Rebellion must be crushed. Order must be maintained. But beneath those whispers, Daewon heard his own voice, faint but still present. "She's right. She's asking for what I would have wanted." "I understand your frustration," Daewon said carefully. "I'm willing to discuss increased autonomy for human colonies. We don't want a council appointed by you. We want freedom." Boram pulled out a data pad and threw it at the base of the throne. "That contains evidence. Proof that you've been making the same decisions Hanasol made centuries ago. Word for word sometimes. You're not Daewon anymore. You're just another puppet emperor doing whatever the crown tells you to do." The throne room was silent. Su Bin and the other aides looked uncomfortable. The accusations hung in the air like a blade. "You will leave," Daewon said quietly. "Now, or what? You'll kill me like you killed those Vexian crews? You'll tear my ship apart with your magic crown powers?" Boram smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Go ahead. Prove me right. Show everyone that the human emperor is just another tyrant." Daewon stood. The crown's power surged, ready to be used. He could feel the weapon systems in the station, could direct them with a thought. It would be so easy to eliminate this threat. But he remembered Taeyang's words from 10 years ago. "Don't become like them. You're free to go," Daewon said. "But Boram, understand this. The galaxy is not kind to small independent worlds. The protection I offer is real. Without it, your colonies won't last a year." Boram picked up her data pad. "We'll take our chances." After they left, Daewon sat alone in the throne room. Su Bin approached cautiously. "Your Majesty, should I prepare security measures? In case they attempt another attack?" "No." Daewon rubbed his temples. A headache was building behind his eyes. The crown usually prevented such things, but lately, he had been experiencing them more frequently. "Let them go. Increased security will only make them more desperate." That night, Daewon did something he hadn't done in years. He accessed his oldest memories, the ones from before the crown. He sorted through 10 years of imperial knowledge and centuries of borrowed memories, searching for the man he had been. He found a memory of Earth. His sister's wedding. He had been 25, young and optimistic. He had danced badly and laughed freely. Taeyang had been there, both of them drunk on cheap wine and the joy of watching their friend find happiness. The memory felt distant, like watching someone else's life. That man didn't exist anymore. Even if Daewon wanted to go back to being him, he couldn't. Too much had changed. Too much had been rewritten. Jinne's hologram appeared. "Your Majesty, I've completed my analysis of your neural patterns. And the merging is accelerating. 10 years ago, your brain patterns were 90% original. Now they're 65%. The crown is absorbing more of you with each passing year." Daewon closed his eyes. "How long until I'm gone completely?" "At this rate? Perhaps 40 years. Maybe less if you continue to rely heavily on the crown's power." 40 years. It sounded like a long time, but Daewon knew it wasn't. He would live forever, but only 35 years of that forever would be spent as himself. The rest would be spent as something else. There must be a way to slow it down, he said. There is. Stop using the crown's abilities. Rule as a normal human would, using only your own knowledge and judgment. But your majesty, you know that's not possible. The empire requires the crown's power. Without it, you cannot maintain control. 3 days later, Boram was captured during a raid on an imperial communications hub. She and her team had been trying to steal encrypted data. They had failed, and now she sat in a holding cell waiting for judgment. Daewon went to see her in person. The guards were shocked. Emperors didn't visit prisoners. But Daewon needed to see her, needed to confront the accusations she had made. Boram looked tired but defiant. She didn't stand when he entered the cell. Come to gloat? She asked. I came to talk. Daewon sat on the bench across from her. You said I was making the same decisions as Hanasol. I reviewed the data you provided. You're right. Boram blinked, surprised. Then you admit it. You're losing yourself. I am. The crown is designed to preserve the empire, and it does that by making each emperor similar to the previous ones. Successful strategies are reinforced. Failed approaches are discouraged. Over time, every emperor becomes the same emperor. Daewon leaned forward. But I'm not here to justify myself. I'm here to ask you a question. If you were in my position, what would you do? I would never put on that crown, but I did. And now I'm stuck with it. So answer the question. The Vexians are still hostile. The Karathi Combine demands tribute. Pirate fleets raid outer colonies. How do I protect 300 worlds without using the tools I've been given? Boram was silent for a long moment. You can't, she said finally. That's the trap, isn't it? You need the crown to rule, but using the crown destroys you. Hanasol cursed you perfectly. Yes. Daewon felt a weight in his chest. So I make a choice every day. Use the crown and lose more of myself, or refuse the crown and watch people die. There's a third option, Boram said. Find someone to share the burden. You don't have to rule alone. Create a council with real power. Delegate. Trust others to help carry the weight. The crown doesn't allow that. An emperor cannot divide power without weakening the empire's command structure. Then break the crown. Daewon laughed, but it was bitter. Do you think I haven't tried? The crown is integrated into my nervous system. Removing it would kill me. Breaking it would kill me. I'm bound to it until the empire falls, and the empire is built to last forever. Boram studied him. You really are trapped. I almost feel sorry for you. Don't, I chose this. I knew there would be a price. Daewon stood. I'm releasing you and your team. No charges. No punishment. Why? Because you're right. I am becoming something I never wanted to be. And maybe, if people like you keep challenging me, keep reminding me of what I'm losing, I can hold on a little longer. He walked to the door, then paused. Boram, I can't give you complete independence. The crown won't allow it. But I can give you more autonomy. A colonial council with real authority over local matters. It's not freedom, but it's closer. And if we reject that offer, then we'll keep fighting each other and we'll both lose pieces of ourselves in the process. Daewon looked back at her. I've already lost too much. Don't make me lose more. After releasing Boram, Daewon returned to his quarters. He stood before the mirror again, as he did most nights, searching his reflection for signs of the man he had been. He found fewer signs each time. His face was the same. Not a single wrinkle, not a gray hair. He looked exactly as he had at 32. But his eyes were different. When he looked at his reflection, he sometimes saw Hanasol looking back. Or the emperor before her, or the one before that. 51 emperors, all of them still alive inside him. All of them slowly consuming what remained of Daewon. He thought about Boram's words. Break the crown. It sounded so simple. But Giantess had been searching for 10 years and had found nothing. The knowledge required to safely remove the crown had died with the Talaxian species. 50 years had passed since Daewon took the crown, and the galaxy knew him now as the Eternal Emperor. He had stopped correcting people who called him that. It was accurate after all. He hadn't aged a day while generations lived and died around him. Taiyang was gone. His old friend had died 5 years ago, peacefully in his sleep at the age of 97. Daewon had stood at the funeral and felt nothing. The crown had dulled his emotions, had made grief feel distant and abstract. He knew he should have cried, but the tears wouldn't come. That was when he realized how far he had fallen. Now he stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing a galaxy at war. The Vexian Confederacy had finally launched their full invasion. 1/3 of the Empire was under siege. Hundreds of worlds were fighting for survival, and Daiwan commanded the defense with cold efficiency. "Admiral Heiwan, status of the 7th Fleet?" he asked. The admiral was Taeyang's granddaughter, a woman of 40 who had inherited her grandfather's tactical mind. She saluted crisply. "The 7th Fleet has engaged the Vexian forces at System 47. We're holding but barely. They outnumber us 3-1. Redirect the 9th Fleet from Sector 12. Let the Vexians take those colonies. They're not strategically important." Heiwan hesitated. "Your Majesty, there are 2 million civilians in Sector 12. Who will die anyway if we lose this war? The 9th Fleet moves to System 47. Those are my orders." Heiwan's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty." After she left, Daiwan stood alone among the holographic displays. He could feel the Empire through the crown, could sense every ship, every battle, every death. 2 million people in Sector 12 would soon be under Vexian occupation. Many would die in the invasion. The rest would live as conquered subjects. He had just sentenced them to that fate with 5 sentences. The old Daiwan would have agonized over such a decision. The old Daiwan would have searched for alternatives, would have tried to save everyone. But the old Daiwan was mostly gone now. What remained was an emperor who calculated lives like numbers on a spreadsheet. Save the many, sacrifice the few. Win the war. Worry about the cost later. It was the same logic Hanasol had used. The same logic all the emperors had used. Jinny's hologram appeared. "Your Majesty, I have news about the research project." Daiwan felt something stir in what remained of his human heart. For 50 years, Jinny had been searching for a way to break the crown's curse. They had made progress, but it had been slow. "Too slow, tell me. I've found someone. A human scientist named Yunseo. She's young, only 28, but brilliant. She's been studying ancient Talaxian technology independently. I believe she may have the key to separating the crown from your nervous system. Bring her here immediately." Yunseo arrived 3 days later. She was small and intense with sharp eyes that seemed to see through pretense. She wasn't intimidated by the throne room or by the emperor himself. She studied Daiwan like he was a puzzle to be solved. "You're really 82 years old?" she asked. "Chronologically, yes. Biologically, I'm still 32. Daiwan gestured to the crown. "This is what you're here to study. Can you remove it without killing me?" "Maybe. I've reviewed Jinny's research. The crown's integration is extensive but not impossible to reverse. Think of it like removing a parasite that's woven itself into your nervous system. We can do it, but it will be painful and dangerous." "How dangerous?" "There's a 60% chance you'll die. A 30% chance you'll survive but suffer severe brain damage. And a 10% chance of complete success." Yunseo crossed her arms. "Those odds will improve if I can study the crown more closely. I'll need access to your medical data, access to Talaxian records, and time." "How much time?" "Years, maybe a decade." Daiwan felt despair settle over him. A decade. He would lose even more of himself in that time. The merging was accelerating. Jinny estimated he had less than 15 years before he was completely absorbed into the amalgamation of emperors. "Begin your work," he said. "Whatever resources you need, you'll have them." The war continued. The Vexians pushed deeper into Imperial space. Daiwan threw fleets at them, sacrificed worlds, calculated acceptable losses. He was winning slowly, but the cost was staggering. Boram's son, Jae-sung, had become a problem. He led a new generation of rebels who saw the war as proof that the Empire was failing. They sabotaged supply lines and spread propaganda. Daiwan should have crushed them, but something in him resisted. Maybe it was the last whisper of his humanity, telling him not to destroy the people who remembered what he had been. 6 months into the war, disaster struck. Admiral Heiwan's flagship was destroyed during a battle at System 94. The ship was torn apart by Vexian fire. 3,000 crew members died, including Heiwan. Daiwan received the news while reviewing supply reports. An aide delivered the information in a neutral tone, as if reporting a minor equipment failure. "The admiral is dead. The flagship is lost. Recommend appointing a replacement." Daiwan processed the information. Heiwan had been a good officer. Her death would require adjustments to the command structure. He would need to promote someone to fill her position, perhaps Commander Kangmin. He had experience in fleet operations. Then Daewon realized what he had just done. Haewon was dead. Tae Yang's granddaughter, a woman he had watched grow up, was dead. And his first thought had been about command structure adjustments. He felt nothing, no grief, no anger, no sadness, just cold calculation about military logistics. That was when Daewon understood he was losing something more fundamental than his identity. He was losing his ability to care. The crown wasn't just absorbing his memories and personality. It was stripping away his emotions, his connections to other people, everything that made him human. He stood abruptly, startling the aides in the war room. "Leave everyone out!" They fled quickly. When he was alone, Daewon tried to force himself to feel something. He thought about Haewon, about Tae Yang, about his sister on Earth who he hadn't spoken to in 20 years, about all the people he had known and lost. Nothing. The crown's whisper was constant now, a voice that never stopped. They were expendable, resources to be managed. Their death served the Empire's survival. "Do not grieve. Do not hesitate," rule. Daewon wanted to scream, but he couldn't even manage that. The crown had taken so much that he barely remembered what strong emotions felt like. He accessed his oldest memories again, searching desperately for something real. He found that memory of his sister's wedding, but it felt like watching a stranger's life. The joy in that memory was incomprehensible to him now. When had he stopped being Daewon? When had he become this cold thing that calculated deaths without feeling? Janae appeared. "Your Majesty, you need to return to command. The Vexians are pushing towards Sector 7. We need your orders." "Janae, am I still human?" The hologram flickered. "Your Majesty, am I still human? Or am I just a machine wearing a human face?" Daewon looked at his hands. They looked real, but they didn't feel real. Nothing felt real anymore except the crown and its constant demands. "I just learned that Haewon died and I felt nothing. Not sadness, not grief, not anything. What does that make me?" Janae was silent for a moment. "The merging is advanced. Your emotional responses have been suppressed by the crown's imperative to rule without sentiment. But Your Majesty, the fact that you recognize this, the fact that you're disturbed by it, means you're still partly yourself. How much of me is left? 30%. Maybe less, 30%. Less than a third of the man he had been. The rest was Hanasol, and the 50 emperors before her and the crown's cold logic. "I need to end this," Daewon said quietly. "I need to end this before I'm completely gone." "And what?" "The war? Everything. The war, the curse, the empire. All of it," Daewon stood. "I'm going to the Vexian homeworld. I'm going to negotiate peace. Your Majesty, that's suicide. They'll kill you the moment you arrive. Let them try. The crown won't let me die, remember? That's part of the curse," and Daewon headed for the door. "Prepare a fast ship. I leave in 1 hour. And Jeannie, tell Yunseo to accelerate her research. Tell her she has 2 years, not 10. Because in 2 years I won't be Daewon anymore. I'll be completely lost." The trip to the Vexian homeworld took 3 days. Daewon went alone, piloting a small diplomatic shuttle. The Vexian fleet intercepted him immediately, weapons charged and ready to fire. "This is Emperor Daewon," he transmitted. "I request an audience with Supreme Commander Yi Jun. I come to negotiate peace." There was a long silence. Then surprisingly they let him land. Yi Jun was ancient even by Vexian standards. He had ruled the Confederacy for 2 centuries. He met Daewon in a council chamber surrounded by guards. "You're either brave or foolish," Yi Jun said. "Why would I negotiate when I'm winning this war?" "Because you're not winning. You're bleeding resources and ships for every meter of space you take. This war will last decades if we don't stop it now. And at the end, whether you win or lose, your Confederacy will be weakened. Easy prey for the Karathi Combine or other powers." Daewon sat across from the ancient commander. "I'm offering you something better. Peace with territorial concessions. Take half the Empire's outer sectors. Let the rest remain under Imperial control. We both survive and the galaxy doesn't burn." 2 years had passed since the treaty with the Vexians. The war was over, and the galaxy had entered an uneasy peace. But for Daewon, time was running out. He stood in Yunseo's laboratory surrounded by equipment he only partially understood. The scientist had worked without rest for 2 years, and it showed. She looked exhausted, but her eyes burned with determined focus. "It's ready," she said. "The process will take 3 days. Maybe 4. And Your Majesty, I need to be completely honest with you. The survival rate is now 40%. Better than before, but still not good odds. Daewon touched the crown. He could barely remember what it felt like to be without it. The crown was part of him now, so deeply integrated that removing it would be like removing part of his brain, which technically it was. What happens if I survive? He asked. You'll lose most of the crown's abilities. The connection to the Empire's systems will be severed. The knowledge of previous emperors will fade. You'll essentially become human again. Yunseo paused. But Your Majesty, there's something else. The crown has been suppressing your aging. Once it's removed, your body will try to catch up to your chronological age. You're 84 years old now. Your body is frozen at 32. The shock of that adjustment could kill you even if the removal process succeeds. So even if everything goes perfectly, I'll still probably die? Yes, I'm sorry. Daewon looked around the laboratory. Jae-sung stood in the corner watching silently. The rebel leader had become an unexpected ally. When he learned about the plan to remove the crown, he had volunteered to help. Bo-ram's son wanted to see the end of the Empire as badly as Daewon wanted freedom. Jinny's hologram flickered nearby. The AI had been with him for 54 years, longer than any living being. She had watched him change, had witnessed his slow dissolution into the collective consciousness of emperors. Your Majesty, Jinny said softly. Are you certain? You've spent 54 years building and maintaining this empire. Removing the crown means giving up all of that. The Empire doesn't need me anymore. The treaty with the Vexians is holding. The colonial councils are functioning. Human governors run most worlds now. Daewon smiled, though it felt strange on his face. He smiled so rarely these days. I've done what I needed to do. Now I want to do what I should have done years ago. I want to be free. Even if freedom means death? Especially then. Death would be a mercy compared to what I've become. Daewon turned to Yunseo. Begin the process. The scientist led him to a chair that looked more like a medical bed. Straps, monitors, needles, equipment designed to keep a body alive while its brain was being rewired. Daewon lay down. Yunseo began attaching sensors to his head, his chest, his arms. Each one felt like a small invasion, but he welcomed it. These machines would free him or kill him. Either outcome was better than eternal rule. Your Majesty, Jae-sung stepped forward. Why are you doing this? You could rule forever. You're powerful, basically immortal. Why give that up? Because power without humanity is just tyranny wearing a crown. Daewon looked at the rebel leader. Your mother understood that. She tried to show me before I lost myself completely. I'm grateful she did. She would have liked to see this. She died 3 years ago. I know. I'm sorry I couldn't mourn her properly. The crown took that from me too. Daewon closed his eyes. But maybe if I survive this, I can learn to feel again. I can mourn all the people I should have mourned. I can be human again. Yunseo finished her preparations. We're ready. Your Majesty, once I begin, there's no stopping. The process must complete or you'll die. Do you understand? I understand. Begin. The pain started immediately. Yunseo had warned him it would hurt, but nothing could have prepared him for this. It felt like his skull was being torn apart from the inside. The crown fought the removal, sending jolts of agony through his nervous system. He screamed. Neural integration at 90%, Yunseo said, her voice clinical despite her obvious distress. Beginning severance protocol. The pain intensified. Daewon felt the crown's tendrils being pulled from his brain one by one. Each severance felt like losing a piece of himself. But he realized that's exactly what was happening. He was losing the pieces that weren't himself. The borrowed memories of 51 dead emperors. The cold logic of imperial rule. The suppressed emotions and calculated cruelties. He was losing everything the crown had made him, and it hurt worse than anything he had ever experienced. Through the pain, he heard voices. Hanasol spoke first, her voice echoing in his mind. You're breaking the curse. After 800 years, someone finally found a way. Other voices joined hers. 51 emperors. All of them aware in his consciousness, all of them watching as their collective existence was torn apart. We are the Empire, they said together. Without us, you are nothing. Without us, the Empire will fall. Then let it fall, Daewon gasped. Let it fall and build something better, the voices screamed. They raged. They tried to stop the process by flooding his mind with their memories, their experiences, their absolute certainty that the Empire must survive at any cost. But Daewon held on. He focused on his oldest memories, his sister's wedding, Taeyang's friendship, his mother's face, The wonder of seeing his first alien sunset, all the small human moments that the crown had tried to bury. Neural integration at 50%, Yunseo announced. He's surviving. Keep going. Hours passed. The pain never stopped, but Day One endured it. He felt the crown's power fading. The connection to the Empire's systems flickered and died. The knowledge of centuries slipped away like water through his fingers. He was becoming smaller, weaker, more limited. He was becoming human. Neural integration at 10%, almost there. The voices of the emperors were fading now, becoming whispers. Hanasol spoke one last time. You were a good emperor, Day One. Better than I was. You remembered mercy when I had forgotten it. You remembered what it meant to be more than the crown. Her voice was soft, almost kind. I'm sorry I cursed you. I was bitter and dying and afraid. I wanted someone to share my burden, even if it destroyed them. That was cruel. I'm sorry. I forgive you, Day One whispered. And then she was gone. All of them were gone. The crown lifted from his head with a final surge of pain, and Day One felt truly alone in his own mind for the first time in 54 years. He gasped, cried, laughed. He was free. Neural integration at 0%. Crown successfully removed. Yunseo's voice was shaking. He survived. He actually survived. But the celebration was premature. Day One's body began to convulse. The aging process that had been suppressed for 54 years suddenly activated. His cells tried to catch up all at once. He's going into shock. Get the stabilizers. Day One felt his body changing. His joints ached. His muscles weakened. Gray streaked through his hair in seconds. Wrinkles appeared on his skin like cracks in old paper. He was aging 50 years in minutes, and his heart couldn't handle the strain. I'm losing him. Cardiac arrest. Yunseo worked frantically. Machines beeped and screamed. Jinei's hologram flickered wildly, unable to help but unable to leave. Day One felt himself slipping away. Dying. Really dying this time. Not the fake death the crown had prevented. And he felt something he hadn't felt in decades. Peace. But then somehow, his heart started again. The monitors stabilized. The aging process slowed and stopped. When Day One opened his eyes, he was alive. He was also old. Really old. Medical scans later would show that his body had aged to approximately 70 years old. Not his full chronological age, but close enough. He had gained almost 40 years of aging in 4 minutes, but he was alive. And he was human. Day One spent 2 weeks in recovery. His body had to adjust to being mortal again, to feeling pain and fatigue and all the small discomforts he had forgotten. It was wonderful. When he was finally strong enough to leave the medical bay, he found that the Empire had changed in his absence. Without the crown's unifying influence, the 300 worlds had begun reorganizing themselves. Human worlds formed a democratic federation. Allied species created their own governance structures. The Vexian territories expanded peacefully into the vacuum left by the Empire's contraction. The old Empire was dying, just as Hanasol had predicted. But something new was being born. Jae-sung came to visit him. The new Federation wants to offer you a position. Advisory role. They value your experience even if you can't remember most of it anymore. Daewon shook his head. No, I've ruled long enough. Let someone else lead. I just want to go home. Home? Earth, I haven't seen it in 54 years. I want to see my sister again if she's still alive. I want to walk on soil that knew me before the crown. Jae-sung nodded. I'll arrange transport. The crown itself was locked away in a museum. Yunseo had modified it before storage, removing the curse of immortality and the forced personality merger. It would never trap another soul the way it had trapped Daewon. Janae came to say goodbye before he left for Earth. Her hologram looked sad. If such a thing was possible for an AI. I'll miss you, Your Majesty. Just Daewon now. No more titles, he smiled. Thank you, Janae. For everything. For helping me survive. For helping me remember who I was. Will you be all right? On Earth? I don't know. But that's the point, isn't it? I get to not know things now. I